This video shows you how to build an insurance company financial statement forecast and dividend discount model. I'll show you how to do it with the keyboard, without the mouse. Subscribe, hit the like button, share this video with friends and family. Continue to watch for more great content. Let's get into the video. Google Chrome is the ninth thing on my taskbar. To open it, press Windows key 9, Alt E as in Echo, B as in Bravo, arrow up to Google Colab, tab over to today's notebook, and this is the notebook for today to calculate the cost of equity for an insurance company. There's no such thing as enterprise value for an insurance company, since due to their large excess cash amounts, the enterprise value for an insurance company often yields a negative number. So calculating the enterprise value by calculating unlevered free cash flows and discounting them back to the present at the weighted average cost of capital doesn't work very well. And there's no such thing as an unlevered insurance company, since there's embedded leverage from directly writing premiums, because not all of those are recorded today. There is some unearned premium reserve, which is a liability on the insurance company's balance sheet, and so there's an embedded leverage there, and therefore it's hard to separate operational and financial leverage for an insurance company. So you don't use weighted average cost of capital with the traditional method of sort of finding 5 comparables, calculating their levered betas, using the Montigliani-Miller formula to delever each of those 5 betas, taking the average of the 5 unlevered betas and then relevering them at your target company's capital structure that you're trying to value. That doesn't work for insurance companies, so what you do instead is you calculate cost of equity. We do it with Python in the Monte Carlo method in Python. So that's what this is about today. First, import the modules needed to run this algorithm. So import panel data analytics and statistics, or pandas as it's called, as P as in Papa, D as in Delta. Import numerical Python, or NumPy, as N as in November, P as in Papa. Import mathematical plotting library decimal pyplot, as P as in Papa, L as in Lima, T as in Tango. That's also called matplotlib. Import Seaborn, as S as in Sierra, N as in November, S as in Sierra for data visualization. Then import yfinance, as Y as in Yankee, F as in Foxtrot. That'll get the historical data for the insurance company. And I will change this to reflect insurance companies. I did a recent video on bank valuation, so the code is very similar. I'm using a set of 5 comparables. These are insurance companies rather than banks, since we're trying to value an insurance company. And then I'll adjust the historical closing prices, make this as of August 6th, since that's the time this is being recorded. And what you do is you create a list of tickers. So create the tickers variable and set it equal to a list of the tickers you want. And then I create a data variable and set that equal to Yahoo Finance decimal download with 3 key arguments. Tickers, which I just created, that was the list, start date and an end date. And then at the end I have in a list adjusted close, that's telling the algorithm to get the adjusted closing prices rather than all the data. Then to calculate the daily log returns, I create a variable called log_returns and set it equal to numpy decimal log. And it's the data, the adjusted closing price, divided by yesterday's adjusted closing price minus 1. So you can just do the data variable divided by data.shift with 1 as the argument. Then I can calculate the average and standard deviation of returns. So I'll create two variables, mean_returns and standard_returns. So those are equal to log_returns.mean with an empty tuple as the argument, and log_returns.standard with an empty tuple as the argument. And finally, it's time to perform the Monte Carlo simulation. I'll create a number of simulations variable, set that equal to 10,000. So the Monte Carlo method will be run 10,000 simulations today. Number of years equals 5. And the simulation results variable is going to be equal to panel data.dataframe with an empty tuple as the argument. For I as in India in range with number of simulations as the argument. The annual returns will be numpy.random.normal. A distribution based on average returns, standard deviation returns, and the number of years argument, all of which are variables I created. Cumulative returns, that variable is going to be equal to numpy.exponent with the argument numpy.cumulative sum of annual returns as the argument. To calculate terminal price, I'll get a terminal price variable which I'll create. So that's going to be equal to data.iloc with -1 as the argument times cumulative returns. And then simulation results with I as in India as the argument in the list is going to be set equal to the terminal price variable. And then to get the required cost of equity, since it's 5 years of data, I've got to divide the total returns by the number of years, which I've set equal to 5, and then print the cost of equity. And that gets me to the final answer. And this is a part where even I will have to use my mouse to scroll down here. You can see the required cost of equity is 20.904%. That's quite high, but remember we used 5 comparables only, and for a relatively limited data set, start of 2018 through the present 6 August 2023. And so it's important to keep that in mind. But that's how you run the cost of equity for an insurance company. You use the Monte Carlo method rather than the traditional method of calculating levered betas for comparables, delevering them, taking the average of them, relevering them at your company's target capital structure. Because you can't separate operational and financial leverage for an insurance company, use the Monte Carlo method instead. In part 2 of this video, I'm going to discuss the financial statement modeling and dividend discount model itself now that we have the cost of equity. So stay tuned. The File Explorer is the first thing on my taskbar. To open it, press Windows key 1. Arrow over Documents, Excel Workbooks, Modeling. We'll go to FIG, Insurance Company. Alt Tab, Alt F4 to close that. And let's begin. The color coding scheme for today's workbook: blue values are hard-coded, black values contain formulas. Dark red values come from Python. There's only one dark red value, and that's the cost of equity that was calculated in the earlier part of this video. So for year, I've got trailing 12-month financials in column B as in Bravo. Of course, you can hard code the number 1 and then sum, lock in cell C as in Charlie 5 with an absolute reference, and then lock it in again for the second argument with a mixed reference, and then you can nicely drag the years out. So for premiums earned for the insurance company, that's going to be last year's premiums earned times 1 plus the earned premiums growth forecast, which is 15%. I have that in cell B as in Bravo, 92. Total investment income is the product of the total investment assets, which are going to be on the balance sheet, and a expected return forecast of how much the insurance company is going to earn on those assets. So I multiply the products there. You can see here in row 46, total investment assets. For realized gains and losses, it's very hard to predict those, so I'm just forecasting 0 for the life of the forecast. Other operating income is last year's other income times 1 plus the other operating income growth rate forecast, which is in cell B as in Bravo, 94. By summing these up, you get total revenue for the insurance company. Losses, claims, and reserves, that is based on a percentage of premiums earned. So it's going to be the premiums earned times the C as in Charlie, cell C as in Charlie, 95 forecast cell, which shows what I'm forecasting the percentage of net premiums earned to be, or what I'm forecasting losses, claims, and reserves as a percentage of premiums earned to be. So you drag that across. Similar here, losses, benefits, and adjustments. That is based on the premiums earned times some percentage of the premiums earned that I'm forecasting, which is in cell C as in Charlie, 96. And so other reserves is just equal to the difference between those two. But I also want it to never drop below 2.5 million. So I do a max of either losses, claims, and reserves minus losses, benefits, and adjustments, or cell I as in India 14, which is hard coded to 2.5 million. You can see here I made the text white so you can't see it, but in the formula bar you can see that it's 2.5 million. So I'm assuming that the reserves never go below $2.5 million. Selling, general, and administrative expenses, that's going to be a product of premiums earned and the SG&A as a percentage of premiums earned forecast, which is in cell C as in Charlie, 97. Drag that out. I'm straight lining other operating expense. Then I can subtract the revenue in row 11 minus the sum of cells 13 through 16 to get to To get to operating income before interest expense. Interest expense is going to be the total debt times the interest rate on debt, which is in cell B as in Bravo 101. Total debt is in row 62 on the balance sheet. And then subtracting out interest expense, that gets me to operating income. Then I have non-operating income. I'm forecasting that to be zero. It was zero in the historical trailing 12-month year. Unusual expense, I'm forecasting that not to occur in the future. So that'll be zero as well. And then reconciling income and expense. Because I'm assuming the reserves don't drop below 2.5 million, I have to reconcile it. There has to be, in this case, some other income, or it could be an expense, so that the income statement matches revenues and expenses. So I use an if statement. If the difference between losses, claims, and reserves and losses, benefits, and adjustments is less than 2.5 million, then I subtract the losses, claims, and reserves from losses, benefits, and adjustments. Otherwise, if that's not the case, it's just zero, because there would be no reconciliation needed. So add all that up, that gets me to pre-tax income. So the other operating income plus the reconciling income minus the sum of unusual expense and non-operating income or expense. Then I have the income taxes. That's a product of pre-tax income and the tax rate forecast, which is in cell C in Charlie 98. A lot of these items were zero in the historical years, trailing 12 months, so I forecast them to continue to be zero, and that gets us to net income. And there's different items like minority interest expense, extra items and gains and losses, discontinued operations. I'm forecasting, and preferred dividends, forecasting all of that to be zero. So that gets us to our net income available to common stockholders. Then you can calculate earnings per share by dividing the net income by the shares outstanding. Basic shares outstanding, I'm assuming they issue no new equity, similar with diluted. Then you divide net income by diluted shares outstanding to get the diluted earnings per share. All right, now we're on to the balance sheet. For the balance sheet, cash is going to be the max of either last year's cash balance and the net change in cash, or cell I is in India 45, which is equal to 1 million. So I'm assuming that cash never drops below 1 million. Total investment assets is last year's investment assets times 1 plus the investment assets growth rate, and cell B is in Bravo 99. Premium balance receivables, I'm forecasting that to be zero. Property, plant, and equipment is it's a product of earned premiums times the property, plant, and equipment as a percentage of earned premiums forecast. The intuition there is that premiums will drive the insurance company to open new offices so that they continue to grow and underwrite more insurance policies for clients. Investments in unconsolidated subsidiaries and separate and variable account assets were zero in the historical year. I'm assuming that continues. We have deferred charges. That's going to grow by the same rate as the earned premiums grow. So last year's deferred charges times 1 plus earned premiums. Tangible assets, I straight line. Intangible assets, they were historically zero, so I'm going to continue that. Then I use a model plug. This can include cash other than the minimum cash balance needed. And so I've hard-coded those in to make the balance sheet balance, and then you can see the total assets, which is a sum function. Insurance policy liabilities, unearned premiums, and policy claims all grow with the same rate as earned premiums. Other insurance liabilities, I'm forecasting that to be 0. Total debt, I'm straight lining, so I assume no new net issuance of debt. So even if they were to pay down debt, I'm assuming that they issue new debt to keep the $5.25 million debt level constant. Capitalized leases, provisions for risk, and deferred taxes, those are 0 historically. I'm assuming that stays the same. Other liabilities, I'm straight lining. Total liabilities is the sum of all liabilities. Equity is a product of total assets, and the equity as a percentage of total assets forecast in cell C is in Charlie 91. Accumulated minority interest was 0 in the historical year, so I'm assuming that stays the same. You can add up liabilities and equity. Assets minus liabilities plus equity, rounded off to 1 decimal place, should equal 0. It does, so that's the balance check, so that we know that the balance sheet balances. When I get to cash flow, I don't build out a full cash flow statement because it would be redundant. We already have the income statement and balance sheet. But you can see here net income, subtract out change in premiums receivable, subtract the changes in investments, add changes in reserves. That gets you to your net cash flow. Then you subtract changes in other assets, add changes in other liabilities, subtract out dividends, and you get to the net cash flow number. Price per share, there's no real way to forecast that, so I'm just straight lining it. Common dividends, you have to back the dividends out of the model when you're valuing an insurance company, so it's beginning equity plus net income minus dividends equals ending equity. So I reverse that formula around to back the dividend out of the model. And I'm therefore assuming that the insurance company doesn't run out of equity capital. It's only going to pay out dividends that it legally can to stay within its regulatory requirements for regulatory capital. You can see all the forecasts that I was talking about earlier in this video: premium growth, other operating income, investment income. It's going to be 3.5% of total investment assets. Losses claims, that's 75% of premiums earned. Losses, benefits, and adjustments, 60%. Selling, general, and administrative will be 5%, 21% tax rate forecast. Total investment asset growth forecast, that's also going to be 15%. Property, plant, and equipment, 2% of premiums earned. Interest rate on debt, 5%. So you can see the dividends, which I got from row 85. Cost of equity, that came from Python from the earlier part of the video. I discount the dividends. Dividend divided by 1 plus the cost of equity raised to the number of years power. I assume an exit multiple of 1 times book value. I get an exit price based on forward 12-month book value, which occurs at the end of year 6. Discount that exit price. Add up the discounted exit price with the discounted dividends to get the intrinsic equity value. Divide by shares outstanding to get equity value per share. And then I can do an intrinsic price to book calculation as well for 105% of book value. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the notification bell, hit the like button, leave a comment below, and please buy my books. The links to those will be in the description of this video.